We have missed Billy Corben around here. He's been very, very busy with his second job, which is consuming a little bit too much of his time. We're going to need more of his priorities over here at Meadowlark, where he's being paid in pizza and sandwiches. And he's off making documentaries and very busy. What can you tell people about the one you're presently working on? Is it a big secret, or is it something that you can tell people about? Because I can't wait to see it. It's richly Miami.
I can tell you what it's about. That's about the extent of it. It is about Jerry Falwell Jr., his wife, Becky Falwell, who regularly vacationed down here in Miami Beach. They often stayed at the Lowe's Hotel, and a couple times they stayed at the Fontainebleau Hotel, where back in 2012, they met a young pool attendant, a 20-year-old man from Westchester, Miami, that neighborhood, who went to St. Brendan's High School, and he was working at the Fontainebleau as a pool attendant, making some good money. It's kind of like a nightclub scene at the pool at the Fontainebleau, like Las Vegas. They picked him up for a cuckold threesome. They became a throuple in which Jerry Falwell Jr., at the time the president of the largest Christian university in the entire world, the son, of course, of the legendary demagogue Jerry Falwell Sr., founder of the Moral Majority, and the man who said that the United States deserved the 9/11 terrorist attacks because of the homosexuals and the ACLU and the lesbians and anybody else who he decided he was morally better than. Anyway, his son liked to watch, allegedly, his wife having sex with a 20-year-old pool attendant from the Fontainebleau. And they wound up in this entanglement for 7 years, which includes also purchasing a $4.65 million commercial property on Alton Road, not too far from where you are right now, Dan. And they are, to this day, partners in this real estate transaction and this property with the young pool attendant, who's now on to graduate school in Georgetown and eventually came out publicly with this sordid tale just in time for the 2020 election. And of course, Jerry Falwell Jr. was most famous recently, but prior to this sex scandal, he was most famous for being the first evangelical figure to embrace Donald Trump and endorse him, a man divorced twice with 5 children from 3 different women, not your typical evangelical candidate, but Jerry Falwell Jr. did continue the tradition of evangelical Christians in the United States, starting with his father, Jerry Falwell Sr., having a significant role in electing every single Republican president since Ronald Reagan, who interestingly ran against a real Christian, a Baptist by the name of Jimmy Carter, who evangelicals turned their back on in favor of a divorced former B-movie actor, a arguably moderate or liberal governor of the state of California, who in 1967 signed the most probably liberal abortion bill in the history of the United States, suddenly became a crusader for the right in Ronald Reagan. So very interesting parallels between Reagan and Trump, which we also draw in the documentary, which will premiere on Hulu this fall.
Cannot wait for it. It's got all of the rich Miami details and is an American story, a religion story. Billy picks good topics, so I cannot wait to watch what he's immersed in, as I said, on his second job. While he was away, wasting Meadowlark budget on pizza and sandwiches, a lot of different things happened locally and throughout Florida. Let's start with this week's news on DeSantis. Where do you want to start there?
Where do you really go from a cuckold threesome with the first family of evangelical Christians in the country? You go to dictator DeSantis, the great authoritarian of Florida, who, if Trump allows him to be reelected in November to the governorship, will no doubt be the next Republican president of the United States, and not one that particularly respects elections or individual rights or so-called parental rights, as he likes to call them, as long as parents are imposing the morals and values and lies of history that he wants to perpetuate. And just this week, breaking news, dictator DeSantis decided to suspend the duly elected state attorney of Hillsborough County, which is in the Tampa Bay area, because state attorney pledged that he would defend women's rights to privacy under the state constitution and would not enforce against women in particular a 15-week abortion ban with no exemption for rape incest or human trafficking. The Hillsborough State Attorney Andrew Warren, I should say now the suspended Hillsborough State Attorney Andrew Warren, had said that the 15-week abortion ban is unconstitutional and that the Florida Supreme Court in 1989 said that abortion rights are covered under the state constitution's privacy rights. He also said that he would not be enforcing new laws banning trans therapy and allowing people to make decisions about themselves, their bodies, their children when it comes to gender issues. You know, a major culture war demagogue issue for Ron DeSantis. And what he has done is he has installed an ally, a puppet prosecutor in Andrew Warren's place, a woman who he had just appointed as a judge last year and now is saying, like, okay, I'm going to remove a guy who was reelected countywide in Hillsborough by 53.4% of voters. Ron DeSantis, by the way, was only elected by about 49.6% of Florida voters. So this guy, Andrew Warren, this prosecutor, is more popular in his county than DeSantis was statewide in their last elections. And yet DeSantis is going to remove him from office because he is not going to impose these unconstitutional laws that DeSantis has helped pass. And so this is a pretty outrageous act of authoritarianism and spitting in the eyes of 53.4% of the voters of Hillsborough County who elected this guy to office. Pretty outrageous, pretty antithetical with supporting the rights of individuals to be free, to have bodily autonomy, to make decisions for themselves and their families and their children. Remember, the Don't Say Gay bill, which Republicans often want to remind you is actually not called Don't Say Gay. It's called the Parental Rights Bill, which says that parents should have a right to control their children's education in the public school system, and it has been a tool to, through intimidation and threats and unconstitutional laws, has silenced teachers from teaching real history about racism and slavery, about gender identity, about even having conversations with students about facts and reality and history. Instead, in its place, we have indoctrination, right-wing extremist indoctrination programs that teachers are now attending to learn civics, they say, to relearn civics, where they say they teach teachers that Thomas Jefferson and George Washington were against slavery and fought against slavery. That is a lie. They were slave owners. In fact, Thomas Jefferson was one of the biggest slave owners in the country. We're teaching teachers lies, and DeSantis is instructing those teachers to impart those lies to Florida students. So pretty scary times here for parents, students, women, and gender illusionists, Dan, in the state of Florida and the Wynwood neighborhood.
So basically, if you're a state employee and you say something like, I don't know, like the truth or something that's covered by state or national law that goes against Ron DeSantis's wishes, you're going to get suspended or fired. That's basically what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what a dictator does through threats and intimidation, changes the conversation, silences people, deprives them of their right, not only of free speech, but of bodily autonomy to make decisions about their children, like what forms of entertainment parents can take their children to see. And it's worse than that. What the Don't Say Gay bill also accomplishes, or the Stop Woke Act, or the Parental Rights Bill, whatever they want to call it, what it actually also does, Roy, is it dictates the conversations that private businesses can have as well. Because if Dan or Meadowlark were to compel you to take some kind of course on history or racial sensitivity that makes you feel uncomfortable, well, not really you, Roy, but maybe makes Billy or Chris feel uncomfortable.
Why Billy? What are you doing to Billy? Why would Billy be uncomfortable talking about what's that about? I don't understand what you're accusing Billy of.
I'm not accusing him of anything. What I'm saying is
it feels like an accusation.
Yeah.
It's not a law that covers Roy's discomfort, if you hear what I'm screaming. Mm-hmm. It's a law that covers the discomfort of white people in learning real history, in learning about racial inequities and systemic racism. And then you can turn around and sue your employer.
Billy, are you a white person?
When's the last time you laughed at a fart joke, Billy?
Or
like
prank called somebody.
Calls. Yeah.
So serious all the time.
I mean, it was 5 minutes of fire hose there. It was. I'd like to interrupt the show for a second. I'm happy.
I'm getting a lot of emails intended for Billy Gill right now.
What's happened here?
Very annoying. It makes me mad.
I feel like we've gotten 10 minutes into today's Because Miami. And for the people who value information, well delivered, hugely informative, the fire hose that is Billy Corben has given you so many facts that they're flying in your face and in your eyes, and it's wearying and deteriorating as he worries correctly about democracy. But Billy and Chris want to know, when's the last time you laughed at a fart joke? How often do you fart? I guess they want to dumb this down just a little bit.
Prank calls. Last time you prank called someone.
Just dumb it down.
When's the last time you were silly?
Yeah.
Silly Billy.
Exactly. Dan gets it.
Probably this morning.
What did you do? What was so silly?
What did Silly Billy do this morning?
Silly Billy.
I probably. I don't know. I tell a lot of Florida dad jokes. It kind of comes with the territory. I told the joke. What's a duck's favorite snack?
A quacker?
Cheese and crackers. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty.
I thought it was gonna be a quacker.
He's letting it loose.
Yeah, that's Yeah,
I don't think it deserved any.
We could also do what does Roy call white ducks? Quackers. Is that no?
You've crossed the line. Now you've crossed the line, Billy Corben. I hope we can get you canceled.
Do you ever do the thing where someone's like saying something very serious and poignant, and you just go in the middle?
A raspberry.
Yeah, have you ever done that?
Just spin into the mic there, Chris.
I will actually lift their shirt and put my lips on their belly and do it.
Yes, that's old school dad trick right there, man.
Yeah. Dan, I'm trying to get canceled left and right here today.
That's
unsolicited belly rest.
Well, here, I've done that to children that aren't mine, and it becomes something that becomes uncomfortable for the parents. There's Dan again.
You at least knew the parents, though.
There's Dan again.
Dan, that is the first time anyone will accuse you of grooming.
Oh, no.
Look at that. That was Billy being silly. You got that? That was good. I've got a number of different things, seriously, that I do want to talk to you about. And one of them is the unhoused population. I do some of this, Billy. It's partly my fault, Gil and Chris, because I do take him to all the serious places where he has the good stuff. So the homeless population, or the unhoused population across from Fisher Island. Tell people what's happening there. Fisher Island, the most expensive piece of property anywhere in the United States, I think.
Yeah, it's right across the bay there from Fisher Island. It is actually a wonderful place. We've talked about many times before. Virginia Key Beach. It was the Black Beach back in the Jim Crow era of Miami. We talked about this a lot, how Miami, people forget, as this diverse metropolitan city, was in fact the American South, the Jim Crow South, where Miami Beach, where you're sitting right now, was a sundown town where people of color were not allowed after dark. And in fact, you could have Muhammad Ali fight in Miami Beach. You could have Nat King Cole and Sammy Davis Jr. perform at nightclubs and hotels in Miami Beach, but they were not allowed to spend the night or sleep in the hotels that they were performing in. They had to leave and were only allowed to travel at night with a license that they went to the police station to be fingerprinted and permitted for. And only then they could be driving home over the causeways for work or back to work. And that was it. The only way Black people could be on Miami Beach after curfew. And but Virginia Key Beach was the place, the historic Black Beach, where Uncle Luke's pretty pissed about this because he remembers very distinctly his parents taking him there, the only beach they were allowed to go to. It's actually a very beautiful beach right there by the Marine Stadium and Rosenstiel School, University of Miami's Marine Biology School, the best in the country. And this property is also the home to a water treatment plant. It was home to Jimbo's, a very famous kind of hangout that was in a legal operation for many decades, but of kind of an institution in Miami. It's home to the Lagoon, where Flipper, the classic TV series, was filmed in part. And now Commissioner Como Mierda, Joe Carollo, who we've talked about many times, known as Crazy Joe, coined so by Carl Hiaasen in the media back when he was the wife-beating mayor of Miami. He has now proposed that they open a homeless encampment They contract, of course, with a company, an insider construction company, to build mini houses to bus homeless people off of the mainland onto an island miles away from jobs and services and public transit, and just put them off here on the north part of the island, which overlooks Fisher Island, which is the richest zip code in America. It is the richest zip code in America. Incredibly, it was also originally owned by Miami's first black millionaire, who sold it to Carl Fisher, who built this exclusive, extraordinary, waspy, white, rich community there, which will now, if Joe Carollo has his way, overlook this homeless encampment. And, you know, it's not the worst idea in the world, because being homeless is really difficult. When you're living on the streets, it's dangerous and difficult to focus on how to get your life back on track, on education, on employment, on just safety out there. So really, this is a place where they can go and focus and concentrate on their lives. This is a place where it's not really a prison, or it's more of a camp. You know, it's like a camp. So it's a camp where they can go and concentrate, you know, on their lives, like a camp for concentration, like a concentration camp.
We got where you were going, Billy. That's Silly Billy again, ladies and gentlemen. Roy, what did you have for Billy on this front? Because this is appalling, and it feels like, and you've seen this, Billy, as this housing market has gone crazy and more unreasonable than just any, as income disparity falls apart across the world and across the country. There has been an increase in the number of unhoused. What are we trying to do here? Are we just dumping them on an island the way that Austin does some of this without the island, just so that they're out of view?
What is it always in this town? It's a real estate scheme. It's a land grab.
You say it's always that.
It's always that. You look for the real estate scheme, the land grab, and you follow the money. This is the Orange Bowl in Marlins Park. This is Mel Reese and the shopping mall.
This is a great parcel of land, correct? This is a great parcel of land.
It's a pretty stunning parcel of land. It is a park. Miami is now the least affordable city in the entire country. One of the least affordable cities in the entire world. Homelessness is not just an issue that affects the unemployed or that affects the mentally disturbed. This is an issue that impacts people who are gainfully employed, sometimes with multiple jobs, who cannot afford the cost of living in this community. More people are becoming unhoused because they can't afford, even if they're gainfully employed, to live in the community where they work and where their children live and go to school. And so what's happening here, believe me, this is not something that Joe Carollo or the city of Miami is doing out of the goodness of their hearts to assist homeless people. In fact, even the Homeless Trust, who we spend, tens of millions of dollars a year financing to help homeless people, Camilla's House, they're all against this idea for myriad reasons. It is a terrible, terrible idea. But the problem is, this is just step one in a land grab. First thing they need to do is change the zoning, because right now no one's allowed to live there, to inhabit this land. They need water, they need electricity, all the utilities. They need to build that infrastructure, and then they need to build these houses. Everywhere you look, there is contracts. Everywhere you look, there is money. And then what they'll do is, Dan, think about Ocean Drive now. Think about the intentional blight, the negligence of government in a deliberate effort to redevelop a historic neighborhood. It's the same play. They're going to blight it intentionally by moving all these unhoused people there, attracting the ire of Fisher Island, attracting the ire of everybody, and going, well, see, now this is unacceptable. What we have to do is we have to force the homeless people out, and we need to have a no-bid contract to build a multi-billion-dollar redevelopment and housing and condos for the rich. And that's what's going to happen. This is just step one in that process.
I have always loved living in Miami. I still love living in Miami Beach. This is far and away the most scared I've ever been living in Miami Beach. Not just because somebody that I'd met 5 days earlier working at the front of this hotel, talking to him about my father, was shot while doing his job and killed, but because in the last 6 months, when I go out within a 4 or 5 block radius, there have been multiple not just shootings, but fatalities from shootings. And I went out the other night, and it was not uncommon at all, a block from my home, to see a SWAT team rushing through the street and police cars everywhere because there had been yet another shooting. Miami Beach is unsafe, more unsafe than I can remember it being. And Billy, if you've been listening to this, has been telling you for months that this is part of the plan to blight this region so that the property values, everyone can see they can just build condos out here because it's great land, and you can't afford to live here anymore, even as it gets overrun by shooting and SWAT teams. So I will tell you from living in the middle of it, and Billy, you're here all the time. You've had offices here. You can speak to what it is that I'm talking about. You warned us this was coming, and it's happening. And now near Fisher Island, there's another similar. Because if the land keeps getting more valuable, the politicians who are unchecked by local media, because local media doesn't have the resources to shame them, they're just going to keep stealing more and more land.
Yes. I mean, and there's been no evidence to the contrary about anything we've been saying about what's happening here in Miami Beach and Ocean Drive. I come on this program and offered legitimate solutions how to effectively and affordably transform Ocean Drive and policing the entertainment district. The city hasn't done a damn thing, okay? Mayor Magoo, Dan Gelber, just puts his head in the sand. The city manager, Alina Hudak, is managing the city or mismanaging the city into the sea. I don't know what the police department is doing, but you, as Miami Beach taxpayers, I'm a business owner in Miami Beach, we pay an extraordinary amount of money that is dedicated to law enforcement and public safety, and that is being misspent. Quite frankly, I think they're doing a good job at stopping crime, but they're not doing a good job at discouraging it. And they'll claim the best way to discourage it is to harass innocent people, is to be able to violate constitutional rights of people. 5 police officers were charged last summer with doing just that. One of them just pled out to a slap on the wrist. He has actually agreed to, instead of going to prison, will have his record expunged and will retire with his full pension paid by you, the taxpayers of Miami Beach. So there's really nobody is really taking a stand to effectuate any positive change in the city of Miami Beach, least of all the people in the city of Miami Beach government. And the same thing's happening in Miami.
And again, let it not go unnoticed that the only beach that black people could go to during Jim Crow is being used to bus these unhoused people. It's strategic in nature. It's like they're erasing history by doing this.
Oh, yeah. And Joe Carollo is a notorious racist. Joe Carollo campaigned for George Wallace, a very well-known segregationist and racist, for president when he ran for president in the late 1970s. Joe Carollo is one of the few people I know who was actually forced to resign before he was fired from being like a Metro-Dade, Miami-Dade police, like, he wasn't really a real cop, but kind of like a fake cop, but he was like in their like cadet program. And he put in the mailboxes of black and white officers and Cuban and Hispanic officers alike a parody KKK advertisement that he photocopied and slid into their lockers. And black officers complained that they were offended, threatened, and intimidated by it. And Joe Carollo was written up and told, if you don't resign for the Metro-Dade Police cadet program, you will be fired. So if you're wondering what it takes to get fired from the Metro-Dade Police Department, Joe Carollo can tell you, because he nearly was, but a notorious racist and a man arrested for domestic violence against his wife after his 10-year-old daughter was forced to call 911 and scream in tears and hysterics, "My dad's hurting my mom."
Stugotz here for my friends over at Simply Safe. Around here, we talk a lot about the importance of good defense on the field or court. But what about defending your own home turf? Pretty important, huh? We believe home should be the safest place on earth for every family, which is why I use and recommend Simply Safe Home Security. Simply Safe is advanced whole home security that puts you, your home, and your family's safety first. Here's why I love it. Easy to install. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And I love to be able to keep an eye on my driveway to see what packages are coming up, keep an eye, see when the kids get home, when I'm away. I love Simply Safe. It is amazing. Simply Safe offers comprehensive protection, not only against intruders and burglary, but against expensive home hazards from flooding to fires with 24/7 professional monitoring. Simply Safe's agents take action the moment a threat is detected. You can customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/DLB. Go today and claim a free indoor security camera plus 20% off with interactive monitoring. Again, that's simplysafe.com/DLB.
We're presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code Dan for a special offer when you sign up. That's code Dan, only at DraftKings Sportsbook.
I appreciate, Billy, and I always do, and I say this sincerely, for those of you who enjoy Because Miami, although it can be hard to enjoy because it's an unrelenting stream of diarrhea that is it's pretty hopeless, and now you're talking about homeless. But I do appreciate that every time you go over the facts again and again, even though you've said it a number of times, so that people hearing for the first time who Carollo is and people hearing some of this history for the first time, even though you've covered it before, I think it's valuable for the people inside of Miami to learn what has happened here historically in Miami, as well as the way we're repeating history now. I want to get with you.
I think the problem is, Dan, though, is that it doesn't stick. That's why I repeat it. There is no local press. There is no media that serves as the institutional memory of this community, a community with a transient population that needs people, particularly with people with a platform, or organizations, legacy media with a platform, to amplify our sordid history. And yes, Roy's right. There is a concerted effort, particularly when there's a concerted effort, to erase that history. When you have legitimate news organizations platforming hate groups who want to ban books from the Miami-Dade County Public School, who want to ban sex education from the county with the highest rate of new HIV infections in the entire country. When you have people who want to stop young people from learning about their bodies and understanding the consequences, positive or negative, of sexual activity, they want to ban sex education books. People don't remember that. And then I have to watch This Week in South Florida with my friends Glenna Milberg and Michael Putney platforming the members of hate groups with hate speech and censorship speech as if they're a legitimate part of an ongoing debate. There's a minority of loons, of extremists who want to ban and burn books. Okay, some of them are sitting on the school board right now and running for re-election, but the people running against them are worse than them. The school board elections this year are like the choice between, not all of them, but some of the races are a choice between the people who vote to ban the books versus the people who want to burn the books. Those are the options in some of these school board races.
In the next couple of weeks, we will get to you and who you recommend, because I do believe the people who listen to this, especially the ones in Miami, will vote the way that you tell them to on some of these things, because I do believe it's important as these elections approach for people to hear Billy on the history of this and some of what's happening. But when you talk about sex education, a couple of blocks from here, at a very famous brunch cafe that also has history, that is drag dancing, and it's one of the few thriving things, bustling things here in Miami. It's been on Miami Beach and on this strip of land. It has been weaponized. Some video that emerged a couple of blocks from here, not even a block from here.
The Wynwood Drag Show as well. It's a drag brunch. Our House in Wynwood, who has a famous weekly drag brunch. DeSantis has filed a complaint against them with the state because there was some video of some parents who took their children to brunch to see this show. This is a pretty popular form of entertainment going back generations. There's been some popular movies about it, starting with Billy Wilder's Some Like It Hot with Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis, all the way through the 90s, The Birdcage, which was shot right here on on Ocean Drive, a celebration of LGBTQ plus culture in Miami Beach. It is an undeniable influence. This is where Gianni Versace decided to move, much to his peril, to your earlier points, Dan, about the state of the city. Not quite as dangerous as the 90s, perhaps, but certainly feels that way.
A block from here. What happened to Versace happened a block from where we're sitting.
But the point is that Miami Beach, Miami has always had a vibrant LGBTQ community. It was one of the first, in fact, I think the first city in America's South to actually pass an ordinance banning discrimination against the homosexual and lesbian community at the time in the late 1970s. I got to tell you, I grew up commuting when I was a child actor. I grew up commuting between Miami and LA. I spent a lot of time in LA in the film and television world, which also had a very vibrant and influential LGBTQ plus community. And I remember going to the La Caja Fall drag show off of Melrose, where a very famous drag queen, Gypsy, who was in the Mel Brooks movie To Be or Not to Be, which I thought was cool because I knew him from that movie. I was a big Mel Brooks fan. I am a big Mel Brooks fan. And that was just part of growing up. It didn't influence me to dress like a woman. It didn't influence. I was born a heterosexual male. That's how I identify and that's how I feel as a person. But how you could deny other people their truth and their identity, and more importantly, parents. My mother took me to see that show and I said, oh, I like it. It's fun. I want to go back. And we went back. And I got to talk to a guy with a lot of experience about his life in film and television and working with Mel Brooks. And I was able to have that conversation because we went to enjoy some eccentric forms of entertainment that I was cool with, that my mom was cool with. But now this governor who purports to be all about parental rights in his effort to destroy public schools and divert our public money to American madrasas, okay, indoctrinations for Christian nationalism and hate and lies about history. Now parents don't have the option to say you can take your kid to whatever form of entertainment. An R-rated movie doesn't ban children from coming to it. It's a guide for parents to decide whether or not they feel their child is suitably mature for it, whether or not they choose to take their child to that movie. Okay, this is not a form of abuse. These are parental rights. Parents saying, my child says, okay, I am not the gender I was born as. I can feel that. I don't feel comfortable in my skin. I want to do something about that. And the parents and their doctor make a decision to help their child medically. Ron DeSantis, Dictator DeSantis, would lock you up for that, would lock a child up for that. A young girl who is raped, who is human trafficked, who is molested and impregnated by a cousin, an uncle, a father, decides with her doctor and with her family that she wants to terminate a pregnancy. He would say, you need to go to prison. And if a state attorney will not enforce a law that will send you to prison, I'm going to remove you from office and install a puppet prosecutor who will do my bidding. There is no checks and balances in the state of Florida. We have a dictatorship. Everybody kowtows to this guy. The legislature does whatever he wants through threats and intimidation. Teachers are doing whatever DeSantis wants through threats and intimidation. Parents are forced to do whatever DeSantis wants through threats and intimidation. Private businesses are forced to do so because he's threatened to come after so-called woke corporations. He's come after Disney, for crying out loud, for just wanting to do what's right by people and individuals and allow them to have their choices and freedom. He, DeSantis, has silenced Donald Trump through threats and intimidation. Kevin McCarthy's doing the same thing. I mean, Trump knows, again, that if DeSantis gets reelected in November as the governor of Florida, he will be the next Republican president, and Trump is done in the Republican Party. He is a fringe freak cult leader that nobody will listen to anymore. Ron DeSantis, the man who came from nothing, who was losing until Trump endorsed him and made him and created him.
And the blueprint for him, created the blueprint, executed with more sophistication and more dangerously, even than Trump, because he's smarter than Trump. And to me, I think he might be more dangerous than Trump.
He went to Harvard, for crying out loud. He's playing all these rubes in Florida, for playing him like a fiddle and playing Trump like a fiddle. Donald Trump is Dr. Frankenstein getting killed by his own monster. That's the relationship with Trump and DeSantis.
Billy, last time I saw you, and I want to get into some of the history of FP&L as well here. I don't think there's some stuff with Ken Russell that I think we ought to get to. But just before we do that, because when we left the studio last time, Joe Rogan endorsed DeSantis, and I don't think that Joe Rogan has as much information and history here on how dangerous this just is. But when I asked you about it last time, I thought you were soft on Joe Rogan because what he's done is dangerous because he's not paying attention enough to what DeSantis is doing, or Joe Rogan has just gone far right, because you cannot say publicly with that platform that you endorse DeSantis and know everything that he's up to, because he's so much worse at Trump. Trump has given him the keys on how to do this.
Okay. I mean, all I can say is I agree that it comes from a place of ignorance. I think I said that pretty clearly last time. I don't think, first of all, that Rogan endorsed DeSantis. He certainly gave him some stamp of approval. I think the way he handled the pandemic, I think specifically is what he said. I would also disagree with Joe on that. I, in fact, went on the podcast. I was, I think, one of the first, if not the first guests on Joe's podcast after he recovered from COVID, which, of course, he got performing in Orlando. I pushed back on his opinion that we were somehow, the free state of Florida through the pandemic. I think that DeSantis made a lot of very deadly mistakes through the pandemic. But I think you're right. I think he doesn't know the facts. I think he doesn't know what there is to know about DeSantis that I think Rogan would be pretty strongly against. I think the anti-freedom stances, the attacks against personal liberty and individual decisions, bodily autonomy, I think he would absolutely, if he had a full 360 view of the situation, would not support him. But I think you're right, or what you're insinuating, that he needs to take his platform a little more seriously. He's very self-deprecating about, I think he's called himself just an idiot here talking on a mic. But of course, he has a significant following, and he has a responsibility, I think, to those listeners to be informed on some of the things he's espousing opinions on. And I think that's just what it is. I don't think that he has a full understanding of how dangerous DeSantis is, because if Rogan decides that he wants to say something that DeSantis doesn't like, and he lived in the state of Florida, DeSantis would find a way to target Joe Rogan and pull the plug on that mic of his.
Speaking of full understandings, the history of Florida Power and Light, one of the many reasons I love talking to you every week, one of the many reasons I've missed you for a while, is because of how much I value that you bring to this audience a whole lot of detailed reported history on this city and this state. Florida Power and Light, a congresswoman from Tampa, is sending a letter to the Department of Justice calling for a federal investigation into Florida Power and Light. Please tell the people, inform the people what FP&L is in Florida.
Florida Pillage and Loot. They are a legal monopoly protected by state regulations to provide electricity, power service to, I think, at least half the state, including South Florida, and have consolidated some of the smaller power companies and bought them out. When I say this is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, I mean that last year, they generated over $17 billion in gross revenue with a $2.935 billion profit. Their profit last year in 2021 was nearly $3 billion. And the ironically named Florida Public Service Commission has just recently unanimously approved a 4-year rate settlement allowing FP&L to raise its rate starting this year, where they will generate an additional $700 million in revenue, and then another rate increase next year that will generate another $560 million in revenue. You heard that right. A company that made $3 billion in profits last year is now been allowed by a public service commission appointed entirely by the governor, mind you, to raise their rates to increase their revenue, their already $17 billion revenue, by another 1.6 some odd billion dollars in just the next 2 years. This is a company, a publicly traded company, but that means investors and shareholders. Their goal is to turn a profit. It's not to provide a service. It's not to provide a community service. And more importantly, they spend, I think, over $10 million a year, Dan, get this, in advertising. What does a monopoly need to spend $10 million in marketing for. You have no choice. You move in to a house or an apartment or a condo in a certain city.
That's smart by them. I don't think most people know the history of FP&L. I don't think most people are thinking about the history of FP&L. And to spend $10 million on happy commercials that just make it seem like FP&L is really nice and friendly and they'll come out to your house and help you, that's nothing. That's smart of them because I think very few people listening to this know some of what you're about to say.
It's worse than that. They are payoffs. They are paying off the media. For example, I didn't make up FP&L, Florida, Pillage, and Loot. My friend Michael Grunwald, the author of The Swamp, the absolute brilliant must-read history of the Everglades, and more importantly, the politics of the Everglades. He was on many years ago on what was once called the Fernando Mondi Show on 610 WIOD, and he used that phrase, FP&L, Florida, Pillage, and Loot. And FP&L called the station and threatened to pull their advertising because of that comment. They control people through money. The way that dictator DeSantis controls people through threats and intimidation, FP&L uses that money that they take from us to the tune of $3 billion in profits a year, net revenue. What do they do with that money? First thing they do is they hire private investigators to follow journalists who are covering them unfavorably or telling the truth about them in the press. 2, they use that money to funnel into dark money groups in order to run shadow candidates. We've talked about this before. The shill candidate scheme, for which people have been arrested and indicted for and are probably going to prison for. FP&L financed those schemes to run shill candidates with similar surnames to confuse voters on the ballot and have successfully defeated Florida lawmakers who were trying to do what? They weren't trying to stop FP&L from making billions of dollars. They were just trying to harness the power of the sun and the Sunshine State to increase solar power to help all of us live not only more affordably, but to protect and perhaps prolong the existence of the planet. And what they've just done in an extraordinary bombshell report by Sarah Blasky of the Miami Herald just this week, FP&L, through shell companies and nonprofits, managed to take control of a conservative blog called The Capitalist that was started by Rick Scott's former spokesperson. They literally took it over. They bought it. They financed it. Sarah Blasky got a hold from an anonymous source, and they confirmed the veracity of these documents that showed emails from the CEO of Florida Power and Light, the aptly named Eric Sludgy. It's Sludgy, but Sludgy. He was dictating editorial content, Dan, secretly, mind you. Nobody knew that these transactions had taken place. They even discussed it via email and text, that it was very important to keep this a secret, that FP&L was using this blog. They bought this established blog in order to attack the press, in order to attack lawmakers, and in order to influence the conversation. And they did so secretly. They did so unethically, immorally, perhaps not illegally. But no one disclosed that the entire blog, including the primary editor's entire salary, was being paid through money that FP&L was funneling through all of these secret groups. So this is like some Lex Luthor shit.
Oh, but you laugh, and it's all evil, Billy, like beyond immoral and beyond illegal. Because to me, the stopping point on some of this stuff isn't even illegal. Like, this is so abusive. The things that you're talking about are so deeply wrong, so deeply embedded, and only getting worse. Like, it's so fucking gloomy, man. It's infuriating.
It's the importance of local journalism. Uncovering the shadow candidate scheme financed by FP&L. Sarah Blasky at the Herald doing this extraordinary work, uncovering an entire media operation, literally bought and paid for. I'm not talking about figuratively bought and paid for, but literally bought and paid for, owned, operated through various, again, subsidiaries, nonprofits, political consultant groups and everything. an entire media organization. I mean, it's extraordinary. And secretly, it doesn't even say this is sponsored content. This is editorial or op-ed content. It doesn't say this is brought to you by FP&L. No, they deliberately created this web of dark money to funnel through these shell companies to run the media and to change the company. I laugh because it's fascinating. It is evil.
No, you can't laugh. You laugh, but I get dispirited by it. It's Silly Billy, ladies and gentlemen. This is the stuff that he laughs at. We will talk about Ken Russell next week. We have missed you.
Oh, good.
Thank you for stopping by. And tell people, get people ready for how to vote in the midterm elections, okay? Because some of this stuff is getting so just so awful that the people listening to this have to be moved to fight against it.
First of all, I want to say I think we should keep bumping the Ken Russell segment every week, kind of like Kimmel used to do with Matt Damon. Yeah, just like every week, it's like, oh, we'll get to Ken Russell next week. But Ken Russell, by the way, has been invited onto this program to do a one-on-one, to have a debate with Annette Taddeo about their district, the Florida's 27th district congressional primary. I haven't heard back from Ken. He's gone missing.
Keep bothering him. Let's keep bothering him. We will talk to you next week. All right, Billy? Or did you have something else you wanted to say before we got out of here?
I wanted to answer your question, which is if you go to Instagram.com/Billy Corben, Corben, or Twitter.com/Billy Corben, you will see my sample ballot. I will tell you, it is my most diverse ballot ever. There are for everybody who wants to complain about my partisanship, there are Republicans bubbled in on that sample ballot. We don't really have a choice. Some of these elections, some of these races are existential issues. The options are, democracy or fascism. The options are, would you like to continue to live in a constitutional republic? Bubble yes or no. It is one of the worst ballots I've ever seen. It is a cesspool in which in some races, there are no candidates whatsoever to vote for, but I do my best and make my picks.
Billy, you're going to have to help the people out who live in Broward, because I'm looking at my ballot and I'm not even affiliated with a party. I'm going to need some help here.
Yeah, in these primaries, there's a lot of nonpartisan races. You'll notice that. There's a lot of races you are welcome to vote in regardless of your party affiliation or no party affiliation at all. And I just say to you, buena suerte. Good luck, Roy, and all of you in Broward.
Buena suerte. Hablamos la semana que viene. Hasta luego.
Cocaine's.